Hey everybody, this is your Right Geek, Honorary Man King, and leader of the Awkward Cough Squad, here with another set of reviews and discussions of things that I have read this week. First of all, I'm going to cover one that was requested by one of my most loyal audience members. That would be Punchy out there in the audience. He has been urging me to take a look at One Punch Man because of some previous discussions I've had about what makes a hero or what makes a good hero. And he kind of cites this as an example of a heroic character that kind of breaks all the rules and yet still works. So I did read the first volume this week, and I think that it is very interesting visually. There's a lot of interesting action-oriented art in here. As far as the character is concerned, the character of Saitama, based on this first volume alone, I'm not really getting a sense of him yet. I picked up already that he is incredibly powerful to an overpowered degree. And that he consequently finds fighting these monsters boring at this point because he really can just take them out in one punch, hence the title of the manga. But I think what I need to do is I need to read a few more volumes of this to really get a sense of where this story is going. But if I do have a thought as to why this probably works, whereas other heroes that would be classified as overpowered do not. And I think the reason is that the creators essentially put a lampshade on it. They basically acknowledge that if there was a superhero character who was in fact this powerful and could defeat any bad guy essentially with little effort at all, that hero would essentially be very bored with his life. And I think that that's why this hero can break sort of the superhero recipe that I discussed a couple of videos ago. Why it can break that recipe, why it can not follow it at all, and yet still work. I think it works because it has a consciousness that it is breaking the rules. That's quite different from some Western comics that you may see where, especially recently, where you have these characters that are in fact OP and don't really face any antagonists that are truly challenges for them. But the problem with those Western heroes, as opposed to something like One Punch Man, is that when the writers are writing these OP characters, they're not aware of the downsides of being OP. So they act like that's perfectly normal, that a hero can just take a villain out with no effort whatsoever, and they don't, as these Japanese writers do. They don't hang a lampshade on it. So I think that this is why this can break the formula and still work. You basically, in order to break a formula in a successful way, you have to be conscious that you're doing it, essentially. And then you have to really think through the implications of breaking that formula. So I think that that's why that's my theory as to why this book works for many people, despite the fact that the main character is OP by design. But again, I do want to read a couple more volumes of this before I really settle my opinion about how this series goes, and my opinion about this character and how this story works. So expect me to talk about this a little bit more in future videos, because I'm going to give this more of a chance and see exactly where it goes. Other things that I read this week. Let's go back to my books here. My books. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to read more volumes of that series, as I said, to really get a sense of what it is like. Something else I read this week. This is another manga. It's from the Cells at Work franchise. I adore Cells at Work. My major was in neuroscience, actually, when I went to college 20 years ago. So this sort of emphasis on human biology and physiology is something that I really enjoy, and the way that they approach it, the sort of educational aspect, but also the story and the art aspect, I find is very cute, very enjoyable to read. This particular one is Cells at Work Baby, which is basically all the characters are cells that work inside an infant's body, and this volume is basically designed to to teach new mothers about different health things that they need to be aware of with their infants. You can sort of tell that because in the back of this volume there is a little write-up from a pediatrician who is consulting on this particular version of Cells at Work, and he sees it as an opportunity to educate mothers on how best to care for their babies. But like most of the Cells at Work books, these are very, very adorable. We have this little we have the red blood cell, of course, because in most of these, the red blood cells are the main characters, I guess because they are the most common blood cells. Later on in the volume, we have a white blood cell appear. And the interesting thing about the white blood cell in this volume is they write him as kind of a timid character who has to learn to be brave in order to combat the staphylococcus that tries to invade the infant's body. Which that's always an interesting thing about these Cells at Work books, is the primary focus is education on human biology, but at the same time the writers do spend some time and effort actually doing some character development and some story. So for example, in the original Cells at Work books, you had the red blood cell character was kind of ditzy, and she got lost a lot, at least in the beginning of the story, but over time she learns more and she becomes much more effective as a character, until when you get to the story where the body that they're in goes into shock, she actually ends up turning out to be a very heroic character, because while the other red blood cells are giving up on the delivery of oxygen, she pushes on because she realized she says, this is my job and I'm not going to stop. So we have this sort of, in the original Cells at Work books, you had this sort of heroic arc going on with the main red blood cell character. So there were other kind of character development things in that book as well. So in this book, which is the infant version, we have the little white blood cell who has to learn to develop his nerve so that he can effectively do his job. So again, like the education is the most important part, but they do try to get the entertainment and the story in there as well, which is it's a hallmark of a good educational product to not only just straight up give the education, but also try to attract people and get them interested in learning this stuff by actually focusing on making the art aspect of the book something attractive. Basically, what I would call this is good didactic manga. It's didactic, but it doesn't annoy you because they make it adorable. They make the characters relatable, and some of these characters even have genuine character arcs that they go through. So it's kind of an unusual manga, but it's one that I really love, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't tried it. Yeah, so that's this is Cells at Work Baby. There's a whole bunch of Cells at Work books out there now. So there's the original Cells at Work, which they made the anime of. And then there's Cells at Work Black, which is a much more mature version of the manga, in which the cells are trying to operate in a body that does not take good care of itself. So that body has to deal with like high blood pressure and smoking and stuff like that. And sexual peccadillos and stuff like that. I've read that one. That one's a good one too. We have the Cells at Work Bacteria, which is talking about the good bacteria that live in all of our bodies and help our bodies to function and so on. So it's a good little franchise here, and I definitely recommend it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about that I read today, this week. Well, I read Empire too, as you can see, but I'm probably going to hold off on talking about that until I see at least one more volume of this. I am still kind of engaged in Empire because I want to find out what happens to Tony Stark. Obviously, being a huge Tony Stark fan, I think that there's something relatively interesting going on with him, and I just want to see where that goes. The rest of the story, it's okay. There's some things in the fourth volume that are definitely put in there to intentionally shock the audience, but one of the deliberate shock value things they put in there didn't really shock anyone who has read Marvel Comics for the past several years. So to me, all that stuff was basically, or that particular thing was basically a big shrug. I don't want to spoil it, but and then the other shock thing, it seemed, honestly, if I were a fan of the particular character in question, I would be very upset about what happened there, because it seemed like it wasn't real respectful of the character in terms of, allowing that particular character to have to die in a way that actually matters. So I would have been upset about that. But anyway, so that's just a couple of comments on Empire. I am going to talk about that more when the next issue comes out, because I do want to see where it goes from there. But today I want to talk about this one that, yes, I absolutely did buy. This is Transformers My Little Pony, Friendship in Disguise. I feel like I need to fill in that niche that Mim Hedrum left when he stopped making YouTube videos, and I need to start reviewing some of these My Little Pony comics. because I do love My Little Pony, and I think, oddly enough, IDW, generally speaking, does a good job actually writing these comics to tie into that series. And this bizarre crossover is honestly no exception to that. I think that this ends up being a quite enjoyable read. What continuity is this even supposed to take place in? So they're like see, this is why these nonsense crossover stories shouldn't even happen. So this is another example of an artistic team putting a lampshade on the fact that what they're doing here is absolutely ridiculous. How do you cross over the Transformers with My Little Pony? We're just doing it for shits and giggles, essentially. So this guy here, I think it's just supposed to be fun. And honestly, it actually turned out to be fun. So honestly, I agree with the guy at the newsstand. So this ends up being a good kind of enjoyable read. There's nothing super serious or deep about it. It's just if you want to have a popcorn read to enjoy for a few minutes to pass the time, this is an excellent thing to read. And basically what happens in this story is that the Changeling Queen opens up a portal that allows the Transformers to enter Equestria. And there's some good things that happen here. Trying to find some good panels here. There's a good little bit when they get transported through the portal and the Autobots are falling through the sky. There's a joke that genuinely made me laugh. Let me see if I can find it here. We're pretty close to it, I think. Yeah, Chrysalis, what did you just bring here? Yeah, this one. So here are the Autobots. Optimus, are my optics busted? Or are we plummeting to a surprisingly colorful doom? That I actually genuinely laughed at. I think this is fairly well written for a comic that's really meant to be friendly for young readers. It doesn't it's not like some of the all ages books or that Marvel has put out, or the books that Marvel has put out for the specific purpose of attracting young readers. Unlike those books, this one doesn't really talk down to you. It just tells a good, fun, popcorn kind of story. And what's interesting is that they actually managed to make the two different universes meld pretty well. I love, for example, the part of the story where we have Rarity meeting the girl Transformer is especially good. What I particularly like about it is the fact that Rarity holds her own in the fight that happens, and then they really hit it off because they realize that they have something in common, that they actually value friendship, which is the whole theme of My Little Pony, and that therefore they can be friends because they're kind of on the same page. So that's really great. It's really adorable. I enjoy it, as I've enjoyed a lot of the My Little Pony comics. IDW doesn't always do a good job with its licenses, but in the case of MLP, they actually have managed to get artistic teams that can do that particular universe justice. And this crossover that really should not work whatsoever actually does work. So I recommend it. If you're a fan of My Little Pony, or you're a fan of Transformers, or if you're a fan of both, this is actually something you should pick up. It's not as stupid as it sounds. It actually works. So those are some of the things that I've been reading this week. I'd appreciate some of your comments. Did any of you buy the MLP Transformers crossover? Let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you again next week. Thank you for listening. The Right Geek out.